Once you have this, I want everyone to start looking at a bit more complicated challenges. So here I have a sequence of natural numbers, in this case 20. And what I want to do is that determine whether or not this number is a Fibonacci number or not. So this might give you flashbacks to 108, 148. Don't worry, I'm not gonna make you do any math. We're gonna type them code together. So we're gonna declare a new function is fib. We're gonna say it takes in an input of x. And we're gonna let a equals 1, b also equal 1. So this is the JavaScript syntax. Uh, we're just defining two variables here. It's very similar to Java, just without the types. So it should be fairly familiar to a lot of you. But I'm sure you can figure it out if you haven't used Java or JavaScript before, as it's also similar to Python. You just have these curly brackets here instead of semicolons and tabs. Okay. So if b is equal to x, we want to return true. Otherwise, we want to let temp equal b, add a. So we're just generating the Fibonacci numbers here and seeing if it's equal to it. So we're terminating the loop whenever we found a Fibonacci number that's bigger than x. That means we haven't gotten to this if statement, which means we can safely return. Is everyone okay with this code? So again, we're just adding two numbers repeatedly and see if it's equal to x. Okay. So to check if it's a Fibonacci number, we can just call this function is fib with this input. Oh yeah, you gotta save. And we see that 1 is indeed the Fibonacci number. Remember, the Fibonacci numbers are 1, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And to make this apply to the whole row, don't touch deploy yet. We will go over it. Leader. This is just the beginning to see how to really call functions and get familiar with the syntax here. So we see here, I extended by using this little blue thing to the whole row. And we see it also filters it for us here. As this filter is a pre-built function to Google Sheets. Oh, oops. So everyone managed to get to this stage where you have all the Fibonacci numbers mapped to true or false, and you manage to filter it. Yeah. So the code, that's correct. I'll just so make sure you save your project. So you can do Control S or press the save project icon. Otherwise, it will not find the function. So for example, if I renamed it to is libc and I don't rename it in there, it won't find the function. I need to save it first. Is anyone still having issues? Oh yeah. So one of the many differences between JavaScript and Python is that the true and false are not capital. Trips me up every time as well. So to call the function, you can just do equals and then is fib with the arguments. Okay. So now that we found all the Fibonacci numbers between 1 and 20, I also want to find the first n Fibonacci numbers. So let's say the first 20 Fibonacci numbers. So to do that, we can just do a very similar function and call it first n fib, for example. And we can start by letting a b equals 1. Again, do const res a b. And the key of this example is to show you that you can also return arrays. You can return more than one number, which would modify the whole column. Or if you make it a 2D array, you can modify even the whole square. So if it's equal to 1, it's just 1. If n is less than 0, we want to return nothing. Otherwise, we want to do another while loop. While we don't have enough numbers, we can let temp equal b again to compute the next number. Just add the two numbers together and push the result to the arrays. So the syntax here, similar to Python, you declare an array with the square brackets, and then you push it with the dot push method instead of a pen. And finally, we return res, which is our Fibonacci array. So the code in the chat will be here. So I do recommend you practice typing along. And then again, save it, and then let's start calling it. So first n fib with the argument being 20. Yeah. So we have the first 20 Fibonacci numbers. How cool is that? Does everyone on this stage, did everyone get all Fibonacci numbers? Did you make sure to save? Yeah. That's my main issue usually when I can't find a functionality. I usually just forget to save. Perfect. Uh, is anyone else having this issue? What L are you getting? What does the cell say when you call it? Name. So it can't find the function. Make sure your function name is correct. Um, Make sure your file name is also .gs and not .html or txt or whatever. It's an actual valid script. Uh, Again, make sure you save on every change you make. So I don't think the file name matters, just the extension matters. So it can't be an HTML file, it has to be a script. Okay, maybe try recreating the worksheet. Try to copy the original one again. So the first n Fibonacci numbers, this function, is just the number of Fibonacci numbers you want to output. So in this case, it was 20, the B1 cell. There's also a note here. I added notes in case you get lost in any of those. Perfect. So again, is fib, you call it like this. Yeah, the code seems correct. Maybe just try making a new worksheet and opening up script again by cloning the original template. Maybe just something went wrong when you cloned it. Yeah. Sorry for any issues anyone is experiencing. Okay. So again, when I typed this formula, I know I kind of went fast over this. I just did first n fib and I did brackets and selected the n cell like this. It's also in the chat. Okay, now we're gonna move on to a more elaborate example. This one is gonna involve fetching weather data from an API. So we're gonna use this one API I found online, openmetro.com. Um, sorry, which can give you you provide longitude and latitude data, the start date, end date, and then what information you want to fetch. In this case, it's daily temperature and then time zone. So I already provided all of that in this get request link, but we're gonna learn how to call it in this example. So we are gonna make a function, and this is gonna be a bit long. So don't worry, I'll post the code in the chat if you can't follow along. So we're gonna need to take dates as input. So this would be an array of dates from here. And we want to map the date to a date object. So currently it's a string, but we're gonna want it to be a date object. And we're calling it flat just in case it's a 2D array. But I'm not sure if it's really necessary in this example. It's just a good practice in some cases. So we're going to check if it's not null, so if it's not an empty string, or and that it's less than the current date. So this just filters out all the empty squares here and whatnot, or if you select multiple, it just helps us uh, get a better validation. And we're going to make sure that we actually have dates before we send the API request. So we're using triple equal signs here because in JavaScript to type check you have to use three equal signs to make sure it's an integer as well as equal to 0. And then we return empty list if it's empty. Then if I will explain what this does in a second. So this line checks a Boolean condition. So in this case, we're checking that every provided X is an instance of a date object. And if it's not, we want to tell the user, hey, you did something wrong. And this is what went wrong, invalidating data. So it's important to communicate to user what went wrong, because even if it's yourself and you're the only user using this code, you always want to know what went wrong, especially if your code base goes long and it's easier to debug. Okay. And next, I will make kind of a helper function. Two helper functions, actually. One is going to be called format date, just to format the date string as a URL encoding. And this is just the format the website wants it in. in the request. So it is kind of annoying to do when using an external API because it doesn't always fit your specifications of a date and not. So we'll also make another one that pads the date number. But yeah, you don't need to worry too much about this code. And I'll also send both of these helpers in a chat. So what this does is it gets the year and it formats it as like year, month with a zero padding. So instead of 6, it'll become 06. Just because that's what the API requires. It is kind of a stupid requirement if you ask me, but it is what it is. And to add the zero padding, we'll do add zero padding string, and k is the number of it's the length of the string, and while the string is less than k, so this is in case it's a number, we need to call to string to have access to the length property. We do string equals 0 plus string and return the string. Okay, I'm gonna take a break here and read the chat. Please let me know if you have any more questions so far. This is before we go to the API call. These are the helper functions. And this is what we have so far. I know it was a lot, so please let me know if you have any more questions. Okay, I'm gonna take it that everyone's good so far. Okay. So now we want to get the range of the dates, so we can get it from the API. So the minimum date in the set would be format date of a new date, and then we get the minimum by passing in all the dates in map date to the math.min function. Um, in JavaScript and I believe C# and other languages, maybe even Python, you can directly compare dates, which is why this works. You can just use the math.min number function as if it was a number. Similarly, we'll also get the max date by doing the same thing but with math.max. So yeah, it checks, this line checks if everything is a date object and it's a valid date. Okay, so now we're gonna need to copy the API call. This is just the first API I found when Googling weather API. So I'm gonna put it in the comment here for now, just so we have a reference to it. So I want you to take a look at the parameter structure here. We have longitude, latitude, which is the location. I think this is UTM. I might be wrong. I don't know what this is pointing to. And start date, end date, and then what we want, which is the daily temperature, daily average temperature in New York, in this case, or the time zone. Okay, so let's make that URL now. Const just stands for constant URL, and we're going to make a new string. This is kind of like an F string. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to tell it the start date is the minimum date, min date, and the end date is the maximum date. Does this make sense to everyone? I'm going to copy this in the chat, but the URL is also here in a comment under the spreadsheet. Okay. And now what we want to do is we want to call this URL. So this is equivalent to fetching it. I also want to show an example here real quickly of uh, what we have returned when we call this URL. So I'm going to put the current date here, which is Halloween. Happy Halloween, everyone. Uh, and hopefully, oh, yeah, I think we need maybe start date to be earlier than, oh yeah, this is, we have this. Yeah, there we go. So I just put the current date here in the parameters. Yeah, I believe we have an extra space here. That's what happened. Um, and we can see longitude, latitude, blah, 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 blah. What we care about is temperature min, um, which is actually null for some reason. It should give you the temp. Maybe they just didn't update for these current days today, because it's like maybe a historical API. Maybe we need to give it maybe a month ago for September. Oh, not again. But I hope everyone sees the point I'm trying to make here. Yeah, this needs to be '09 because they like the font. And this is what I meant with the formatting. Yeah, here we go. We can see the temperature reading for those days. I don't know if you can read this URL, but it's just an example of September 30th and September 29th. So the function is not done yet. This is just an example of the API and what we're trying to call here. What we have so far, though, is this. So yeah, make sure you don't have any extra spaces in the URL. It will mess you up. Okay, now this is probably the most important part, which is to really fetch uh, this information from this URL. And we can do that. This is what the power of Google comes in on Google servers. So everything here we've been doing is running on Google servers. And here we can just do a fetch request using the URL fetch app library and just provide the URL. Note that this by default it does a get request, but it can also do other kinds of requests like post and everything else. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is UTM, the coordinates. Hopefully not my home address. Okay. And now, obviously, we need to do error checking again. So to do that, we have a response object. We can get the response code with this method. And if it doesn't equal 200, and by the way, HTTP 200 means okay, everything went smoothly. So if everything didn't go smoothly, we need to tell the user, hey, something went wrong. And it's better to be as specific as possible. So we're going to provide them with a bit more details. Quest failed with status. So there's a couple of different HTTP statuses that correspond to different errors. But we're going to do get response code and just tell them this status went wrong. So for example, 404 is something everyone's familiar with, um, which stands for not found. So if the URL is deleted or changed, it will return 404 or something, and we'll see, oh, something went wrong. I better look at that URL again. If it's like 400, we know it's maybe a request issue with these parameters. So stuff like that is really helpful to return to the developer or the user that's using the script. So yeah, this is different from normal JavaScript if you are familiar, as you wouldn't have to do any awaiting or anything asynchronously. This all runs synchronously. This blocks the script execution until it is fetched, so it's automatically awaited. So you don't need to do anything fancy. It's very easy to use. And this is a design choice by Google. I'm pretty sure they have a variant which does use asynchronous, but for the most part, you would want to use this. I hope this answers your question. Yeah. Okay. And now, if you're familiar with the JSON format, that is what this format is. Uh, you would want to format it as it's currently in a string format. So to do that, we can use the JavaScript JSON.phrase method and get the text. So this is all the text, all the content we got from the response as text, as a string, and we're just formatting it as a dictionary, essentially. So you can think of this as a dictionary. So longitude, latitude, and what we care about is daily and the temperature mean. Finally, we're going to need a return dictionary. Uh, let's call it dict, make it empty. And then again, we want to access data dot daily. And then I believe it's dot time. Yeah, dot time. And we want to map it back to our original dates. So for each x with index I, that's what that means. We want to add to the dictionary data.daily dot temperature mean with index I. So for every one of these entries, x with the index I, we want to add it to the dictionary under that date. So we're doing a reverse dictionary of the dates and the corresponding temperature. This is just so it's easier to return and map back to these dates here. Once you have that, we can just return this mapping to the dates. So we have it in the same order the user requested. So the dictionary, and then we can format the date nicely because we already have that method. New date. Although this format date call is a bit unnecessary if you just want to return a date object. And that should be it. Hopefully I didn't mess anything up. Nothing ever works the first try, but we can give it a shot, right? So we're gonna call this, but this time passing in an array. So we're gonna select all of this. So you see this full range, and we're gonna press enter. Hopefully this is right. No. Um, add zero padding, capital. Um, yeah, you usually would have some issues. What do I call zero padding again here? Add zero padding. No, it should be right. I'm gonna try to delete it. Add it again. Maybe just didn't update. Oh yeah, new L. Data is not defined. I think it's supposed to be dates. I always get these errors. Sorry about that. Yeah, there we go. We get down the average temperature. I'm in computer science, but I can't code everyone. Uh, Here's the full code, just in case you missed any of that or you're still experiencing issues. You can refer to it. Uh, Note that we didn't need to call this function again as it returned a full array. So we just populated this whole column. This is what we use to call the function. I would love everyone to let me know if they got it working. And again, I really hope this shows you really the power and the potential of what this technology can do, how useful this is. You can just call functions and code within an Excel sheet. Uh, really format anything. The possibilities are limitless, right? Yeah, a lot of courses actually use Excel, and I don't think a lot of people are. Sorry, Google Sheets, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of this functionality. So if you add a new date, what you could do, since we did filter the data, you can just pass in from A2 to A. So this, you see, select this whole column, and then since it is dynamic, if I wanted to add another one, so let's just say I wanted to add maybe up to this. You see, it automatically fetches everything for me. It automatically updates with everything else. So again, to select the whole column, I just did this. I removed the last number. And you can see it just works when I add however many I want. It just makes a new call to the API. Okay, so this part is going to be a lot more involved. We're going to be using the deploy functionality and a lot more other stuff. Uh, so hopefully you got this part working, because we're going to be building up on this functionality a lot. Okay, so I'm just going to make a new function, very, very similar to this one, but it's going to be getting the current date. So they have a different API call for that. And my goal with this one is to record the date. Let's just say every day I want to record the date, the temperature of that day. So we have a new API call here, just to get that. If I open it in my browser, you should be able to see again, we have the current temperature. So we'll just call up a header function that helps us get the current temperature. And again, we're gonna do it really quickly, so because it's kind of the same thing as last time, even a bit easier because you don't need to do all of this formatting stuff. So again, we make the API call. And then res equals response code, error checking, all of that good stuff. And we can throw the exact same error if it failed. And get the data. By phrasing the JSON. Hope you can see how similar this is to what we already did last time. Yeah, so this should just get the current temperature. If I call it here. Of course I didn't save, because why would I? But once I do, you can see the current temperature is 5.6 degrees. If anyone is in Mississauga right now, you can double check me. Uh, yeah. So once we have the current date, we don't just want to call it once. We want to call it to gather it in the spreadsheet. So let's just say every 5 p.m. I want to record the date in Mississauga. So I'll make a new function that actually interacts with the spreadsheet. So we have a spreadsheet app library here, and we can get the active spreadsheet, get sheet by name, um, and we call it data gathering, I believe. Yeah. And we can append a new row to the bottom of it with the new date, the current date, and the current temperature. And that's it. That's all we need to do to get the current date. So you can actually run this function as is by just selecting this function here and see how it sorry, you need to save first, and select log current date, and you can just run it. Authorization required. Of course it is. Google, yeah, it doesn't like you doing your own stuff because it's not verified with them, but you need to allow them to use your spreadsheet. And then execution started, execution completed, and we can see a new entry has been logged. Open Metro. I don't know. Open Metro was just the first one I found out about when I Googled. So it's like the first result for free open source or open API for weather data. There might be better ones. There might be something more fancy, but this is more than fine for this workshop. So that's the one I use. So hopefully everyone can get this running. I'll send you the modified code, but it's very similar to the last one. So we can see we logged a new entry. But I don't want to log in at 5 p.m. and run this every day. I want it to run automatically at 5 p.m. every day. So what I can do is I can go here to executions. Actually, I believe it's triggers. Sorry, guys. Triggers. And then add a trigger and tell log current date to run um, on edit on change. No, event is time driven. Sorry, but you can see there's also all types of events that can trigger an execution of code. But in this case, we want it time driven, and we want, let's just say, maybe monthly, because every day is a bit much. And let's just say on the first of every month, we log the date at 5 p.m. So you can't really do exact times for the most part because this is not your server, and they usually schedule it on like not peak hours of times. So if everyone was scheduling at 5 p.m., they would have a lot more execution backlog. So they don't guarantee you like an exact time, but they give you a range, which is usually good enough. I believe you can also upgrade to do your own triggers and stuff like that. But for our purposes, it's perfect. So I just save it, and we can see this will now run once a month. Just for this demo, I might just do it to a minute. So we're gonna do it every minute. Generally, this is bad because it's just gonna flood your thing after a week. You're gonna see a lot of stuff, but just so we get some data here, I want to see it run. We're gonna do it every minute. But please don't forget to leave it running with every minute. So did everyone get that? Is there any questions about the trigger, the time-based triggers? Okay, I'm assuming everyone got that part. Again, we're just calling this function repetitively whenever something triggers it. And hopefully, yeah, one has already been added. The time is still, at the temperature is still 5.6. Okay. And now I just want one more functionality to demo. I know we're a bit over time since we were supposed to end at 6 p.m. So this was the main bulk of the workshop, the most important parts of it. And now we're gonna be doing more fun stuff just because we can. So we're gonna be rendering some HTML now. So I'm first gonna make an HTML file and I'm gonna call it index. And I'm gonna paste this um, one HTML file I made. I don't know if you can tell what this is. It's kind of a surprise. HTML is not really the content of this workshop, so I'm just going to give you the code in the chat. And we want to render this whenever someone clicks a button, just as an example. Uh, so in this example, we're going to do uh, a function on click. Uh, this will, uh, sorry, this will log the current date, and it will tell you what a great job you're doing by saving all this time with those automation. I could have recalled you guys. I thought it's a dead meme, and I didn't think it would be appreciated, so I spared you guys. But I could have. I do miss those times, the good old days of the recall. So I want to load an HTML output from file, and in this case, it's just called index. We're fetching the HTML, and then we're getting the UI. We're interacting with the UI library of the spreadsheet, and we want to show a dialog box. There's other forms to interact with the UI and render this HTML, but this is probably the easiest one. Log data. So I save this. We have this onClick function. But you see, I go back to my spreadsheet and nothing happens. I did not get recalled. No fancy HTML. And that's because we didn't set any triggers for it. So in this case, I said I wanted a button. So all I need to do is just add a drawing. Draw my button. Maybe add some text. Click me with an exclamation mark. No, very suspicious, I know. And let's make it red, because all the good buttons are always red. Cool. Save and close. And now if I click it, nothing happens. We didn't link anything yet. But once I press these three dots here and I assign script, I can tell it to call this function whenever I click this button. And now, can I get a drum roll in the chat? When I click this button, we get an L because we need authorization. So we're gonna do that real quickly. Thank you for ruining the suspense, Google. And now we get confetti and a nice YouTube video when you log the data, and we see it did add a new entry. If you missed that, you can see I did it again. So this can be really fun if you're making, I don't know, like a game in Excel sheet or anything like that. There's really so much you can do with this functionality. I haven't explored all of the possibilities myself, to be completely honest with you. But that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions or anything else you want me to do, just leave it in the chat and we can work through it together. Otherwise, thank you for joining me. My name is Ido again. Thank you for joining GDC. We have more workshops coming up, I believe, on Friday, tomorrow at 11 p.m., 11 a.m., sorry. And that's about building an app. If you want to learn how to build an app, make sure to drop by tomorrow. Okay, so we have some else in the chat. You do not have permissions to call Append row. So did you do the earlier step of doing like the authorization with the time triggers? Because I think it needs some permission thing to add append row. Also, I'm not sure if you can call it like this. Uh, sorry, when you can call it directly from a cell, because this function directly adds a row to the current spreadsheet. So every time you try to compute this, it will add a new cell, which can be a lot if it's trying to update constantly. So make sure to only do these types of functions whenever you have a trigger like a button or something. Um, for the script, for the button, you want to assign script, you want to do on click or whatever you named your function here. You can really go wild with this. If you make anything cool, please let me know. Send it in the main chat. I would love to see it. I would love to interact with it. We can do like a fun little thing. Whoever makes the best thing, uh, we can maybe get you a custom wall or something in the Discord. So just let us know what you make. Oh yeah, the on-click function it's really short. It's just to render the HTML, but I think I did forget to send it to you. Here's the whole entire. Oh, I don't have Nitro. I think I need to download the file. Okay, Notepad. Okay, I'll send the file in the chat. No problem. Thank you for joining. Um, yeah. So the entire file is now in the chat if you need reference. But you can also find every function individually if you scroll up. The slides can be found here. I'll send the link to the slides. Those are really short. There's no any technical stuff on there, but if you wanna access it, I'll also share the completed demo. However, I'm not sure if you can access the scripts and run the stuff without authorization. So to add an element, no problem. Thank you for joining. To add an element, you just use this line, which is spreadsheet up.get active spreadsheet, get the sheet by name, and then append row. There's other methods you can use. Oh, so we do show model dialog. I'm sure there's also other ways to show it, like show modelless dialog, which doesn't show the border. I'm not sure what the parameters on that are, but let's see if I run this. It looks the same to me. But there are other options here within this library. Not a lot, because UI is kind of a lot. But you can create a menu, a selection menu. There's other stuff you can do. You can show a sidebar here on the side with some functions. There's really a lot you can do. But you obviously can't block the whole screen and delete stuff because that's a security vulnerability. I can also show you another example I prepared. Um, which opens like a dialog menu with a button on it. So if I do this, oh, sorry, I think I deleted the other one. Yeah, and I do on open. Oh, on open. Do I need to show it somehow? Yeah, I didn't prepare this example for the demo, but you can also open menus and stuff. You can go nuts, do whatever you want. Add to UI. Oh, syntax error. Okay. Oh, yeah, there we go. I forgot what this does. Yeah. You have here get weather data, and we can see we have these buttons here. So you can really add stuff to this menu as well. There's a lot of stuff you can do here. You can add stuff to a sidebar. Um, yeah, you just go nuts. So if I updated this, we can do get current temperature. So here, run script. Oh, yeah. I honestly forget how to use this, but I think I need to run the button again to update it. Something like that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so you can really do fun stuff here. You can just log the data silently here. Honestly, go wild if you need any more examples. I'll stay here for maybe the next 10 minutes if you have any more questions. Otherwise, thank you for showing up. This was fun. Click on an element in the site. So it depends. It depends on how the site is made. So this is more about how the website is made rather than um, our code. So usually every site would make GET requests. So for example, I don't know if I wanted to go to if I want to click submit on something, I can just usually submit the post request instead. So HTML forms. They probably have an example here. Yeah, so for example, if I had the form here and I looked at the code, you'll usually see it submits it to the server with like a post request. So yeah, usually it does an action. So usually you can just call this directly with code, with a post request or something like that, and add these parameters and stuff. So you don't need to click a button. You can find what that button does. There are also ways to simulate mouse clicks, but we're not getting into that. We did have a workshop about that last year. If you're interested, I'm sure it's on the YouTube channel or somewhere, the recording. But yeah, I hope this helps. On another website. Yeah. So, for example, if you had your own website and you wanted to trigger something within it, you can just call your own website here. So, if, for example, if I wanted like to call GDC utm.com, I think that's our domain, something like that. And then my action, I can just call that trigger here, and this is my own website. So yeah, I can just do whatever I want with post requests. Granted, I need to own this website to make this action do whatever I want on my website. I can't just make code on other people's computers. That's a security vulnerability. But yeah, you can really do anything as if this was um, your own computer running this. Very little limitations for what you can do in terms of networking. And to make it run every minute again, you just go here, time driven minute timer every minute. and I'm actually going to change this to month because I don't want to forget. So I have a tendency to go a bit of like tangents and stuff, but if that clear answers the question.